Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.
Welcome. Welcome to Satsang. What a beautiful joy to begin with the sound of kirtan and mantra. It just opens our hearts in the most beautiful way, that path of bhakti, of devotion, that just cracks open our hearts. You know, so many times people say, I wish I had more grace in my life. Or I wish, God was there in my life, or divinity was there in my life. And what we so infrequently even look at is, am I open? Grace is there. Divinity is there, but is my heart closed? And when you realize that your heart is closed, or isn't quite as open as it could be, bhakti is one of the easiest and fastest and most powerful ways to open our hearts in that just love of the divine. So, such a joy to begin with that. We are gathering later this evening, and deep, beautiful gratitude to Shreya for keeping this space filled with kirtan while we were in a late arti due to the eclipse. In the Hindu tradition, during an eclipse, you don't do any kind of worship ceremony. You also don't eat or drink or do many other things, but you don't do any kind of worship. So Arti wasn't allowed to begin until 6:45. So Shreya very lovingly kept this space filled with bhakti in the meantime, and thank you. What is the sadhana? Sadhana is spiritual practice. What is the sadhana you would do if time only allowed for one? If I could only do one form of sadhana. Now, typically when we talk about sadhana, we talk about meditation, japa, which is the recitation of a mantra, seva, service, prayer ceremonies, puja. I mean, there's so much that fills in our sadhana, our study of the scriptures, chanting of kirtan. If I could only do one. Well, first of all, the question says if time permitted. So I guess the first thing I would do is figure out how to make more time. If our lives are so busy that we have time to be on 3 or 4 different social media channels, but only time to do one form of sadhana, there's a really serious problem. if we've got time to watch 3 or 4 different shows or different videos online, but only time to do one form of sadhana, there's a problem. So the first thing I would do, of course, is make more time, cut out other things. But for the sake of the question, let's say that time wasn't the issue. Let's say that for whatever reason the universe said, aha, only one. I would actually do a practice of just love. Because for me, that love of the divine is the most powerful aspect of transformation. And so whatever I do, whether I'm doing my mantra in japa, it's just igniting love in me. I mean, the power of japa is not that God really likes to hear God's own name, and the more times you repeat it, the nicer to you God is. It's not that. The power of japa is it ignites love in you for God. Yes, the mantras themselves are alchemically transformative and alchemically powerful, whether you understand the words or not. And anyway, the words, if you look at the vast majority of mantras we chant, the words are pretty much usually just something like, "Oh God," in the form of blank, or "Oh God with the characteristics of blank, I bow to you." So, along with the powerful sound energy of the mantra, what it really does is crack open our hearts and make us start to love God. When I meditate, my meditation works like it's a good meditation day when the mind stills, so the thoughts stop, or at least they become very, very few and far between. And in that spaciousness, an experience of allness, of oneness, not oneness with something, because that implies a separateness that I'm going to now become one with, but just oneness, as though there never were any separation. It's a lifting of the veil of the separation. And then into that, it's love. My heart opens, and it's love. The service I do, the save I do, it's rooted in love. Love for creation, because it's been created by the divine creator. Love for creation because I love being in love. And so to love an aspect of creation that you feel love from, whether it's a human being, whether it's a tree, whether it's a human in any type of form, is incredibly powerful. But it's all about love. And so if I were only allowed by some odd rule of the universe one sadhana, I would create a sadhana that was just all about love. I would just anchor myself in love. Because that for me is always the core. In fact, going back to mantras for a moment, when I first came to India, I heard Pujya Swamiji talking to people about the power of a mantra. And I wanted a mantra so badly. Because the way he was talking about it, like this really, really powerful thing that connects you to God. And I went to him and I said, I want a mantra. And he said, okay, you wait. And he had given a group of devotees who were there, he had given everyone a Rudraksh mala. And I was sitting with them, and so he gave me one, and that was when I heard him talking about the power of mantra. So I had this mala. And I said, please give me a mantra. And he said, okay. He said, but not right now. 2 years he made me wait for a mantra. And it's so interesting because I watched people come in and get it in 5 minutes. I watched some people take a couple months. 2 years he made me wait. And it was such an interesting time because, of course, the mind loves to go, oh my God, I'm so unworthy, I'm useless, I'm the lowest being he's ever seen, and that's why he won't even give me a mantra that could help me. And you just watch the mind tell stories. How you get one piece of information. The guru has said, wait. That's all he said. Just wait. Not wait because you're unworthy. Not wait because there's something wrong with you. Not wait for any reason, just wait. But you get one piece of information. And how the mind tells stories, how I wrapped myself up in all of the stories about why I wasn't getting a mantra. But one thing I did in the meantime was I decided that I wasn't going to be deprived of the power of a mantra just because my guru wouldn't give me one. And so I didn't know any Sanskrit mantras. I was brand new. I didn't know anything. But I loved Krishna. I loved Krishna from the beginning. And so I made up my own mantra, which was, I love you, Krishna. And I did japa on my mala for almost 2 years with my made-up mantra. And I share this with you because just loving. I mean, I didn't get any of the power of these Sanskrit words, of that energy of sound, of it coming from the Vedas. But just the love in my heart, it was so powerful. And so, if for whatever reason the universe deemed that I was only allowed one sadhana, it would just be to love. To love God, but to love God as the infinite aspect of God, which means loving every blade of grass, every tree, every child, every being. It means loving the self, the capital S self, the self that is God, that has never been separate. But also loving this very human, lowercase s self, you could say, with all of its karmic journey and drama, and because it's all part of the divine creation. It's all been created by the divine creator. So yeah, for me, it's always a path of love. But I do have to say I'm grateful the universe has not relegated me to only one sadhana, and that I'm still allowed to do all of the different forms, because they all serve a really different role. They catalyze, they open, they ignite different aspects of my mind, of my heart. So I'm very grateful for all of them. Questions? Yes.
What advice or words of comfort would you have for those of us living with a disease or illness and our people who help look after us?
So, illness and disease. You know, there's two pieces of wisdom. And they're going to seem mutually exclusive, but they're not. The first piece is the awareness that our highest goal in this human birth has nothing to do with health and longevity. It has to do with awakening. All of our scriptures, all of our spiritual teachings remind us over and over again, the purpose of your life is to wake up and know who you are. And for some people, based on their lifetimes of a karmic package, that is most conducive to happen in a situation of financial success. For some, it's more conducive to happen in a situation of what we would call poverty. For some people, it's more conducive to happen in success. For others, it's more conducive to happen in what we would call failure. For others, it's going to happen during a long, healthy life. For others, it's going to happen faced with a serious and even terminal illness. But the goal is always the same, which is the awareness of who you are. And what the universe's agenda is, not that we should be either wealthy or successful or have a super long life, but that we should have the exact situations and circumstances that are the most likely to help us have that awakening in this lifetime. And so whatever we are faced with, to take it as not a punishment, also not a reward. It's not, oh, you're rich, therefore you were really good in a past life and you've been rewarded. Or, oh, you're poor, you must have done something wrong, you're being punished. That's just our Western sort of Santa Claus has a list of who's been good or bad kind of filter that we've stuck on a law of karma that has nothing to do with rewards and punishments. We're not being rewarded or punished because the universe has no agenda regarding wealth, regarding success, regarding longevity. We're just getting those circumstances most conducive for us to take the next step closer to God, to peel back the next layer of the onion of self. So when we're faced with those sorts of circumstances, the question is, how am I supposed to use this circumstance to get closer to God? How am I supposed to see this as my path to God? And it doesn't mean, by the way, that we say, therefore, I'm never going to work to change it. But in this moment, this is my path. That's why it's in front of me. And so I need to use this moment, whether it's illness, whether it's failure, poverty, loss, whatever I've been hit with that we would think is really not what I had wanted. The question is, how do I use this to get closer to God? And by the way, that's the same question to ask when you've got success and money and health as well? That's the question for everyone. Tragically, we just usually only remember to ask it when the situations are unfavorable rather than favorable. Favorable conditions, we feel like, yeah, I'm so good, I deserve all of this. I worked hard, that's why I succeeded. God loves me, that's why everything good is happening to me. And, so we forget. So the question is, how do I use this moment to peel back another layer? And simultaneously to realize that I may, not necessarily, but I may have the ability to change these circumstances, assuming that a change of circumstances is still conducive to my spiritual unfolding, assuming that it's in the will of the divine. I may have the opportunity to change my circumstances through a shift in how I live, in how I think, in how I self-perceive. A shift in so much. There's so many things that we realize when we're hit with a tragic illness, that we realize that we need to work through and go through and look at and heal from. And so it may be the case that in the healing from those things, in the shifts that take place in the heart, in the mind, in the life, that we can co-create a shift in the situation. But while feeling fully empowered for that, and fully in the awareness that everything is possible, it's also critical to realize that a lack of ability to change that around does not speak to a lack of your power to co-create, or a lack of your power to manifest, or a lack of your power to heal. Because sadly, these days with so much beautiful, beautiful inspiration around the power of the mind, the power of meditation, the power of manifestation, along with so many beautiful teachings of that, we've gotten into a situation where, tragically, we feel like everything is due to how I've thought about it. And what that does is it creates a lot of guilt in people who are, for whatever karmic reason, it's not the right moment for them to create something different in their lives. And I hear so frequently people say, I'm doing my affirmations, I'm doing my manifestation practices, I'm doing my meditation, and this illness isn't going, or this situation isn't changing. And then in addition to feeling down because of the situation, they also feel like a failure at this whole manifestation thing. And so it's really important to realize we're not living in a vacuum. We are threads in a tapestry of creation. And that which you are going to be able to manifest is that which is within the realm of your karmic journey. Let's say that I decide right now that what I really want is to become a professional basketball player. Okay, I want the LA Lakers to hire me. Okay? Now I'm 51, about 5'3" if I'm standing up really straight. I've never played basketball in my life. I could be the most committed student of basketball. I could spend 12 hours a day, 14 hours a day, dribbling and running and throwing and whatever else they do on a basketball court. And other than, take your grandma to the ball game day, it's really unlikely that the LA Lakers are going to put me on the court. And I give that example because we forget when we talk about co-creation, when we talk about manifestation, we forget that we are a thread, a divine thread, a united, infinite thread with the infinity of creation. But we're not over here alone. And I've got a physical body, also part of my karmic journey, a physical history, like the fact that I've already lived 51 years, a physical history in which I've never dribbled, all of which has to be taken into consideration. People come and they say, could you pray or give me a mantra or a sadhana to do so that I get into the university I want to get into, or I'm number one in the class, or people say, so my child gets into the university or gets this job. And the dilemma with thinking like that is it implies that somehow God is going to play favorites, because there's only a certain number of places in a university. There's only a certain number of places for the job that we want. And it's like saying, well, could you help me get God's favor over the other guy? And of course, God doesn't play favorites. And in the same way, when we look at aspects of the thread of our lives, we have to realize that we are part of a divine tapestry in which your illness is not just about you. There's a ripple impact upon those in your world that is giving them opportunities to peel back layers of their onion. That's giving them opportunities to dive so deep to get closer to the divine in them. And so it would be to hold both of these simultaneously. That it's all about the life in our days, not the days in our life. And to use those days, to use those moments, to wake up, to see the truth of you, to experience that within you which will never die, which is never sick. I mean, the truth of you was never born, will never die. Chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita is dedicated to this. Never born, never die. To connect with that. And at the same time, to recognize the power of you here to shift your situation. That we've been given the power of the divine in our minds, in our hearts, in that working of the soul through the body to change everything. And so it's a very beautiful, I don't want to say balance because that means they're separate, a a blend, a coming together of the total acceptance of the plan in which this is your path to awakening. And simultaneously, a total embodiment of your power as the divine here in the body on earth to create and to create health. Because we all have that. And so your path is going to be a yes and of both of these. And it's not easy, as you know. And thank you for having the courage to go through this. It's, yes, some of it is due to our past karma, but I also always believe that there's not just a cause and then effect, but sometimes what we have right now that seems like an effect is actually a cause for a later effect. And so I think sometimes about these amazing beings of light, suffering, illness, struggle, in order to teach and show the rest of us what this looks like when done by a divine being of light. We were talking last night about the Ramayana and Lord Ram. And if you look at the Mahabharata and Lord Krishna, who are the two, they're the two epics we have of God on earth. God comes on earth in the form of a human being. And in both cases, their lives are filled with nothing but struggle. In Krishna's case, his own uncle tries to kill him God knows how many times before he's 5, 6 years old. In Ram's case, his own stepmother sends him off into the jungle for 14 years, exiled, with nothing. He's a prince. Has to leave behind the clothes on his back also, go in just like the bark of the tribal people. Nothing. And I've thought a lot about, this is God coming on earth. If God were going to come on earth, couldn't God create somewhat better circumstances and situations? Of course God could. God's God, right? But we've been given these on purpose, I think. Because the struggles, of course, don't end there. Those are the big ones. But in Lord Ram's case, then, of course, he gets back. 14 years are over. Diwali is celebrated. It's beautiful. He's king. And then, boom. Some washerman says, I don't believe your wife didn't sleep with the demon. And essentially, she has to leave the kingdom. Even after she was proved to be totally pure, walks through fire, pure beyond a doubt. But just simply because his dharma as a king is to keep the kingdom happy, he has to live without his wife and children. So it's like circumstance after circumstance of just what seems like it would be misery. But it's been created, I believe, to teach us that even being God on earth is not an inoculation against bad things happening. So certainly being a good spiritual being is not an inoculation against bad things happening. There's nowhere it says, be a good spiritual being and you'll never get sick, you'll never die, your loved ones will never get sick or die, you'll never get divorced, you'll never get fired, your house will never burn down. It doesn't say that anywhere. We're given these examples of God on earth, struggle, turmoil, suffering. But what do they show us? How to do it. Krishna with his flute. Just the flute is on. And Ram is just this embodiment of Dharma, of righteousness, of peace, of love. So we're given these examples, I think, as a teaching that life is full of struggle and suffering. And let us all channel that inner divine within us to go through it. And I know that doesn't make it any easier. But thank you for the opportunity to dive into these truths with you. Other questions?
Mother.
Yes.
Mother, namaste. If this universe doesn't have any purpose or any specific particular interest in the scheme of human affairs, then how we can explain this whole journey of the evolution of our species, right from the one-celled protozoa all the way up to so super complex and highly evolved human being like Christ. So it seems like there is a intelligent driving force, or it's just mindless.
Great. Okay. So when I say the universe does not have a preference of success over failure, or wealth over poverty, or longevity over non-longevity, that doesn't mean there isn't an incredible intelligence in the universe. There's a divine intelligence in the universe, a divine wisdom in the universe that pervades everything. And it has a very clear wish, desire, which is that we all recognize the truth of who we are. Which is why, as I was saying, we get these circumstances that are the ones that are most likely to help us recognize that. So it's not that the universe is mindless, not at all. It's just that it has a much bigger goal in mind than thou shalt become CEO of your company. Thou shalt become a multimillionaire. I don't think it cares much about that. I think what it cares about is thou shalt wake up. Thou shalt experience the presence of soul in yourself, as yourself, and in others. And connect with the world, with the universe, soul to soul. There's an incredible intelligence. I have said many, many times, in fact, I agree with you fully, I've said many times that my belief in a divine creator has actually much more to do with science than it does with religion. I've spent way too much time in science laboratories to believe that this happened randomly. You know, you go into a chemistry lab or a biology lab and you've got your Bunsen burner and you've got your crucible and you've got your beakers and you've got the elements that you're supposed to put in the crucible, and Bunsen burner goes on and something's supposed to happen. And most of the time what happens is nothing. Then you go back over where you made a mistake. Sometimes you get a bad smell. Sometimes you get, some fire, maybe some nice color fire. You don't get life. And even today, billions and billions of years after this big bang of creation, with hundreds of years of modern science, we can't create life in a petri dish. You can take the best biologist in the world, the best botanist in the world. They can tell you exactly what this leaf is made of, how much hydrogen, how much nitrogen, how much carbon, how much oxygen, how much whatever is in there. They can even show you with little styrofoam balls and sticks how the molecules connect to each other. But they cannot create one in a petri dish. The very best, after billions of years of creation, hundreds of years of modern science, the best we've been able to do is essentially make a Xerox copy, right? We did a couple of clones. So we were able to Xerox something, but not create it. We can't create life as an amoeba in a petri dish. And so I'm a deep and ardent believer that there was a capital P planner. Yes, I believe in evolution. I believe in Darwinian evolution. But it's not random. There's a capital P planner who has set this in motion and whose hands, I believe, are holding it and holding us and infusing us with that creative power to be able to be these active members of the act of creation. So there is nothing mindless about it at all. It just has a much, much bigger, longer goal in mind than who's going to succeed, who's going to fail, who's going to be rich, who's going to be poor, who's going to be healthy, who's not going to be healthy, who's going to live a certain number of years this lifetime, who's going to not. There's a beautiful teaching that says, if you imagine a mountain, a mile high, a mile wide, mile high, mile wide mountain, and once every 100 years, a bird with a silk scarf in its beak passes by that mountain and brushes its silk scarf against the mountain. Once in 100 years. The amount of time that it would take that mile-high, mile-wide mountain to be eroded by the scarf is how long we have been doing this. How long we have been on our journeys of the soul. And so the path is a path that's much more than just particular manifestations of karma in this lifetime. And along with that, we have the power. The human birth is seen as the highest, the pinnacle of evolution for one reason and one reason only in my book, because animals are a lot higher than we are in a lot of ways, but in one way, which is it's said that only humans have the ability to be conscious of their own consciousness. And therefore, we are the only ones with the ability to actually attain that moksha, that liberation in this lifetime. So regardless of how long you've been doing it, right here, right now, we have that power. It's why we've been given a human birth. We have that power to have that experience of that infinite soul, of the self. And it's totally independent of the number of years we have here, of what any other aspect of our life situation may be. And so we use that and grab it. And if for whatever reason it doesn't happen for you this time, you decide not ready to let go of that which is keeping me from it, that's okay. So I say the universe is infinitely patient. No problem. You've got next life. But why? Let's make use of this beautiful opportunity. Have a beautiful, beautiful rest of your evening. A beautiful day to our family joining us from all over the world. There will not be satsang tomorrow. I have a beautiful opportunity to be part of a very large online event on healing and forgiveness, bringing together different faith leaders, different leaders of all sorts together to talk about the power we have to heal and forgive and how we can bring that to the world as leaders. And of course, because these things are international but typically based on USA and New York timing, they tend to take place right at this exact time. So I unfortunately will not be able to be in Arti or Satsang tomorrow, but I will look so forward to seeing you day after. And should you be interested in watching the program tomorrow, we'll get a link up. We'll get something up on social media that gives everybody the link to join and watch that. And I will see you all day after tomorrow, back at our regular time. The last 2 days have been full of festival and then eclipse. But we'll be back to our regular time of about 6:30 when we gather again day after.
Om Bhurbhuva Swaha Tatsaviturvareniyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat. Om Bhurbhuva Swaha Tatsaviturvareniyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat. Om Bhurbhuva Swaha Tatsaviturvareniyam Bhargo Devasya Dhimahi Dhiyo Yona Prachodayat.